Section 1.1 is on variables and expressions. Let's take a look at a few terms first. An algebraic expression is the sum or the product of numbers and variables. So you're going to be adding or multiplying numbers and variables together. A variable is defined as a letter that's used to represent an unspecified value. Most of the time, variable is going to be x, that's a common one, or y, also n. So here's some examples of algebraic expressions. 3x, which means 3 times x. 1/4 m plus 5. Notice we have 1/4 times m, and then we're adding to that 5. And the expression 6x squared minus 5y squared. These are all examples of algebraic expressions. A term is a number or a variable or the product or quotient of numbers and variables. And remember, quotient means division. So some examples of this would be, examples of a term would be 3/4, because that's a number, z, because that's a variable, and 3/4 z squared. And that would be the product of 3/4 and z squared. Those are all considered terms. Notice that within terms there's no addition or subtraction. If you have any addition or subtraction like we did up here with 1/4 m plus 5, or 6x squared minus 5y squared, then you have an algebraic expression. Basically, an algebraic expression is made up of, can be made up of several terms. A power is a number or variable multiplied by itself a certain number of times. So for example, here we have x to the 3rd power. X is the base, because that's the bigger number on the bottom. 3 is the exponent, and that means x times itself 3 times, or x times x times x. A verbal expression are the words that we use to describe an algebraic expression. So for example, the words the product of 3 and x is a verbal expression. That, written as an algebraic expression, would just be 3x, or 3 times x. Here are some words that are used for some of the basic operations that we have. If we're doing addition, we can use the words sum, plus, added to, increased by, and more than. If we're talking about subtraction, we can use the words difference, minus, subtracted from, decreased by, and less than. Multiplication, we can use the words product, times, multiplied by, and the little word of. So if we say 3/4 of x, that would mean 3/4 times x. And for division, we can use the words quotient and divided by, but please don't use the word over. Sometimes if we have a fraction, so like a 3 divided by x and a 3 on the top of the fraction and x on the bottom, we'll say 3 over x. Yeah, it's okay to say that, but if you're being very specific, I'd rather have you say the quotient of 3 and x, or 3 divided by x. We have some words for powers. So x to the power of 2 we say is x squared. Y to the power of 3 is y cubed. And y to the 4th power, we don't have a special word for that. It's just, I'm sorry, z to the 4th power. We would say it that way, or maybe z raised to the power of 4. Let's take a look at a couple examples here. Write a verbal expression for each algebraic expression. So here we have 8x squared. Notice the 8 is being multiplied by x squared. So I could say 8 times x squared, and write out the word squared. Don't just do the little 2 as an exponent. We could also write the product of 8 and x squared. And as you can see, there are often several different ways. Since we have several different words to talk about multiplication, there's several different ways that we can write this. Number 2 is 3x plus 4, and I don't want you to just write 3x when you're going to write this out. Please take note of the fact that this is multiplication between the 3 and the x. So I can say 3 times x plus 4 is probably the most simple way. Or if you want to get fancy, you could say the product of 3 and x increased by 4. Either of those is correct, and there's probably several other different ways you can do that. And our last example here is going to take a verbal expression and turn it into an algebraic expression. And there really is generally only one way to do this. Number 1 says 6 less than x. Now you might think it's going to be 6 less than x, but it actually isn't, okay? When we have the words less than, it's a little tricky. I need 6 fewer than x. So if I have, let's say, x number of M&Ms in my hand, I need 6 less than that. I'm going to be subtracting 6 or taking away 6 of those M&Ms. So 6 less than x is going to be x minus 6. 6 fewer M&Ms than those that I have in my hand. Number 2, 3/4 of y cubed. And here's an example of using the word of for multiplication. So 3/4 of means times, and y cubed is y to the 3rd power. So there's a few examples of how to turn a verbal expression into an algebraic expression and an algebraic expression into a verbal expression. Be sure you review those words that we use for the basic operations of addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division.